Thank you very much, Jerry. And to the Sorensen Institute and planners, this is an excellent event. And I'm very, very pleased to be here to join with my colleagues. And I'm told this might be the only time all 9 of us have been together. Someone said earlier that they thought it may have been occasion that the Queen's coming that we all were here. But one thing is sure, we're all here tonight. And I'm the shortest of all of those guys. And I'm going to be the shortest speaking tonight as well. And yet, I want to point out something to you, that there's a distinct difference between my colleagues and me. Very distinct. And I'm very proud of it. So proud of it that I don't talk about it as much as I should, but I want you to know how pleased I am. I am the only governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia to be elected from the city of Richmond who lived in the city of Richmond. That's the distinction. But you know, listening to Jerry and the introduction and hearing him recall the tales of woe and predictions of calamity that would occur if I were on the ticket. Just being on the ticket was going to cause everybody to lose. And then they would lose the House and the Senate. And I'm asked tonight to speak on efficiency. Me? Moi? What am I supposed to know about efficiency? One of the things I recall when Bob Gibson did call the office, every governor is met with the consideration of the subject matters that each has been asked to speak on, whether it's education, transportation, education, everything. I'm privileged now to be teaching at the School of Government and Public Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University. And I constantly tell my students, and I do it on a regular basis, that there is not a single issue of policy that you can bring up that doesn't involve money. And of course, they don't believe me. And they start arguing with me and fussing with me. And then, midway through the course, every time one of them opens their mouths, it's, well, you know, money does this and money doesn't do that. Look at what's taking place in Washington today. Look what happened just recently in the state capital of Richmond today. What is everybody talking about? Money. And what do I mean by money? Where does it come from? Who spends it? And who makes the decision as to where it goes? Now, I said it in 3 simple statements, but it is far deeper than that. Look at Washington and look at what we have here. And so when I became governor, I never served on the Finance Committee in the Senate. My colleague did serve, Ed Willie. He was chairman of the Finance Committee. He could have been chairman of every committee. And I made a habit of every time I would leave court, I would go by his office. He stayed at the state capitol. He literally lived there. And I would go by his office and sit and listen and talk. Now, I didn't have to be on the Finance Committee. I learned so much just listening to him. He would call up people and say, watch this, Doug. he would call up somebody at a state agency and say, look now, he wouldn't say we, I gave you in the budget last year X amount of dollars. Now don't tell me you spent all that money. You couldn't have. If you did, where'd you spend it? So what? Don't want to argue with you, but not going to give you that kind of money this year. As a matter of fact, going to give you a little less than that. And then he said, Doug, here's another way we can do it. He said, if you give people the opportunity to claim a part of what they would spend by not taking it all, they will find more money for you. Well, once I started listening to those kinds of things and hearing those kinds of things, and once I became governor, and when the economy was souring and souring and souring, and the next thing I knew, boy, we didn't have any money. And the question was, where will we go to get it? And so I started looking at combining agencies, making certain that we would have what I would call a safety net to make certain that no one ever was without, but by the same token, eliminating what I would call waste and finding efficiencies and making certain that we had effectiveness. In other words, I started asking this question, not what do you do, but what do you produce? What do you do? Well, I work at something. I didn't ask you that. What do you produce? If you didn't show up tomorrow, what would we miss? If this agency was closed tomorrow, well, what would we go without? And so once we started finding those kinds of things, we did it. And then I started saying, you know, we need to, in this short period of time, find some monies to put aside. And so when my budget and finance people came in and said, we don't have any money, I said, well, the first money we're going to find is $200 million. They said, well, how are we going to get it? I said, we can find it. And what are we going to do with it? I said, we're going to put it into a reserve. Are you crazy? They didn't say it like that. But I said, no, we're going to put it into a reserve. So when the time came for that to take place, Paul Temrick, my finance secretary, was twice as tall as I am, looking down on me, and he said, well, Governor, we've got $25 million, and you wanted $200 million. Never had that kind of money. I said, well, tells you what you can do. Come back and bring me the 200. He said, I can't get any more. See you Monday. Monday he came back. We've got $75 million and we've scraped bone. I said, scrape to the next bone. And when you come back, I want $200 million. He said, we can't bring it. But here's what I learned. I learned if I would reach out to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the House, the chairman of the Finance Committee in the Senate, and say to them, can you find me $200 million? And to the extent that you fund what you want with yours, and let me do what I've got to do with that. And then the House Appropriations Chair, Bob Ball, said, let me do it my way. Hunter Andrews said, let me do it my way. Fine, do it your way. And at the same time, I called the Republicans in, as I told you, John. And I said, this is what we want to do. And so what did happen? Fortunately, we put the $200 million in the reserve fund. I got John Buchanan from Wise County to put that into law to make it in the Constitution. That's why Virginia's Constitution today is called a reserve fund, and it can't be changed. So future governors and present governors at least will have some money, and Virginia will never go broke. That's the kind of thing that calls for efficiency. It marked the first time that Virginia was ever recognized as the best managed state in the nation. And lo and behold, it came the second year to be the best managed state in the nation. And the people who were handling it must have been very, very good, because the person that I'm going to introduce thought so well of him that he kept him in his cabinet when he became the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I'm talking about a man that the legislature had put him out of office. He was in Washington doing well in the Congress. And guess what? Redistricting came about. And they redistricted him out of his congressional office into the governorship of the Commonwealth of Virginia. George Allen, who's been my friend for a long time, who now believes that he still wants to come back and be involved in politics. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce to those of you who do know him and those of you who will know him even better, George Allen, the former governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia and currently seeking office as the senator. George Allen.